Okay, good morning, beautiful people, great people. Very happy to be with you this Friday morning. And thank you for joining and thanks for taking into consideration this important topic that I would like to discuss today. Um, some organizational notes. For those of you who are watching this stream or the recording for the first time, I do these events bi-weekly now, and every time I choose a topic which I think is of importance for the leaders, for the business owners, and for those who want to dive deeper into the topics of teams management. Today, we will talk about the national culture, and I would like to make a short disclaimer saying that there might be things today that I will be talking about that you might be disagreeing with, which is okay. I want to do today a kind of a helicopter view, and we'll talk about some very um, constructive and deep topics in a way. And my objective for today is to make sure that you have a better understanding of how the national culture, the origin from where the person is coming from, how this may influence the team dynamics, and what we as leaders should be doing about that. Okay. If you have some questions or comments or anything, please use chat. I'm checking it from time to time, so would be happy to answer your questions. If you will be watching the recording of this session, please also feel free to get in touch with me directly. Via LinkedIn is the preferred method, and I will be happy to provide more information or to give you some more insights. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Anastasia Belekova. I have more than 20 years of entrepreneurial experience and also working on the corporate side. I'm the founder of at least two businesses. One is the marketing agency, which specialized on hospitality sector, and the second one is Advantage, the experience building company. This is the HR consultancy, training and development company. Um, I have fantastic education. I think I invested really a lot of efforts and time into getting additional certifications and education. This is actually my passion. I love to study. I love to do that. And I'm the certified professional in behaviors and motivators analysis. And this helps me to work with teams, making sure we increase the team's efficiency, excel the communication, making sure that if there are any conflicts, there are grounds and there is context for going through these conflicts and crises in a faster and more efficient way. And I also work as a mentor, not only for business people, but also for startups and young entrepreneurs. And this I even do sometimes voluntarily. So this is about me. With regards to the topic today, again, as I mentioned earlier, there might be some things that you might be disagreeing with, which is okay. The topic as such, if we talk about the national culture, of course, it is very, very complex. Uh, so, what I would like to cover today, I want to talk a little bit more in details about what the culture is, because there are many definitions, and I believe that before going into any discussions, we need to make sure that we agree on kind of terms and conditions so that we are on the same page. I will also talk about the subcultures, why it is important to understand that. Um, I will give, I think, a good explanation about how you can actually describe the national cultures without knowing every single country. In details. This is very helpful if you're managing international teams. And I have clients like that who or might have people from India, from Pakistan, from Russia, from France, from Italy, all in the same pot. So you need to make sure that you understand what is the difference? What makes it, what may provoke some misunderstandings? What are the perceptions that are standing behind? So I will give some basic information that I'm sure would help you to get a better understanding of how it is wired, how you can actually describe and understand better different cultures. And then we will also talk about the organizational culture and how this interacts and how this intersects with the national culture, because of course I want you to go away today with some valuable insights and something that you can use right away. Now, talking about the culture as such, as I mentioned, it is important to be on the same page and have a better understanding of, okay, what are we talking about? And of course, if that would be a live session, I would ask you, how would you define what the culture is? And there might be, multiple, of course, interpretations. However, if we talk about the culture, in trying to describe it, and if we talk about the national culture as such, this is actually a set of traits that differentiates one group of people from another group of people. Of course, the national culture is something that is built for years, decades, ages, centuries. So if we talk about the national culture, it is important to understand that certain things, if we talk about changes, it really takes a lot of time to make the change at the cultural level. It is important that we keep this in mind. This is not something that we can, change just like that. And why I mentioned that is that in the context of managing the teams, usually, let's say the issue is not in the fact that your team members are coming from different cultures. Yes, you and them and each individual in your team have their own mindset, let's put it that way. The challenge usually is that having your own mindset, it is quite difficult sometimes to really understand and accept the fact that people may act differently. I give you a very practical example from a business case that we recently worked with. That was a team where, there were 5 nationalities. And the team leader, the person in charge of this team, he was his background. He was born in Australia, and then he has been working in Europe for a long time. Of course, he has his own mindset, and it was the first time in his career that he had this big mix of nationalities in his team. And he was trying hard to work in the way that he is used to, expecting that there will be the usual outcome that he was always getting, working with, let's say, less diverse teams. But that was never happening. So the way he was communicating with the team, from some team members, he got being neglected. This is how he described that. He felt that it is really difficult to get the feedback from some of the team members. This is because the way we are used to communicate is not usually the way that the people from other cultures may accept that, and it is sometimes difficult for them to also accept what you do, the way you are doing what you are doing. So talking about cultures, if we want to kind of simplify that in a way, the culture consists of several layers, and I will start with the outer circle. If you think about any country or your native country, there are always symbols that are associated with this or another country, and there are a variety of them depending on what we are talking about. I can ask you, what are the symbols that you would associate with Switzerland, for example, or UAE or Russia? And you would always have some symbols that you would attribute to this or another culture. This is like a very, very much outer circle, something on the surface. And if we make now a small step aside and also think of the organizational culture, you also have some symbols. Okay, one thing which I think is very important to keep in mind when we talk about the organizational culture is that regardless if we are making conscious effort about, working on the organizational culture, or we don't, it still exists. It still exists even if you are not paying attention, even if this is not on your agenda. So the organizations which are working on the organizational cultures, they are working on the symbols and all the layers down to the center that I will be talking through in a few minutes. So again, talking about the cultures, there are always symbols associated with this or another culture. Heroes. These are usually the people that are associated with this or another culture. They can be positive, they can be negative. If I would say now Steve Jobs or Donald Trump, I'm sure you would have some idea what is the country that I'm talking about. These heroes are the people that are known. Okay, they might be the reflection of the national spirit. If we talk about the organizations, this might be the heroes that are setting the examples. And again, I remind you, if you are taking care of making your organizational culture, this is the way you can influence and make changes within the organizational culture. Yes, and as I mentioned, there can be anti-heroes as well. When we talk about rituals, these are the things that consciously or unconsciously we do. This is some habits or traditions even that are existing in the society, like celebrating specific days. This is also about the things like if it is a custom usual to give tips. I remember my first time in New York when I was going out of the taxi. I didn't know that you actually need to tip it like 25% of the costs. I didn't know that. So the taxi driver literally has thrown away my luggage out of the car. I was shocked. Okay. This is the cultural clash when you don't know what are the usual rituals here in the country. This might be really shocking. The same in the organizations. There might be some rituals that are consciously or unconsciously created. And if you want to make changes in your organizational culture, these are also the things that you need to think about. And this might be related to the things like, for example, how do we adapt or onboard new team members? What are the usual practices for like career planning, for example? What are the usual practices of how do we arrange for meetings? So things like that. These are also related to the organizational and national culture, culture. And then deep inside, these are the values. This is something that is standing behind all of the symbols and all of the things that are kind of on the surface. And the values, this is something that is really very much inside of the society. There are some countries that are working hard on that, like UAE, for example. Russia is making the efforts. I don't want now, to go into the subject whether it's positive or not. But yeah, these are the values which are actually streamlining everything else. And the values are the things that might work on like different layers and may influence a lot the different things like the I would call it, the collective programming. This is something that really influences all the layers outside. So it is important to understand, what is standing behind these things. And then, so broadly speaking, this is what the culture consists of. Okay, so these are symbols, heroes, rituals, values. And then the interesting thing that there are within these big cultures, there are always subcultures. The subculture is a smaller group, again, that differentiates from the other subcultures. like if we look these days on what is going in Serbia, there are students now making protests. So this is the subculture of the students who are having their own values. They have already their own rituals. They have their heroes. They have their symbols. The subcultures can be people who are having similar values, or they have some other features that make them like unique, that differentiate them from the others. And if we talk about the organizational culture, there are also subcultures, and this is actually sometimes the basics for some conflicts and misunderstandings happening. If you think about the marketing department and the finances, okay, these are two different subcultures. Yeah, believe it or not, sometimes it's very difficult for them to talk to each other because these are different subcultures. So it is very, one more thing, if we talk about the situations of mergers and acquisitions, for example, and there are, two teams, for example, getting together, these are two different subcultures that might be conflicting. So if we think about our roles as leaders, we need to think about what are we in terms of the bigger picture, in terms of the organizational culture, and what are the subcultures that might be influencing our relationships within the team. Going further, if we speak about the culture, I am very proud to introduce you to the 6 dimensions model of the company called the Culture Factor. I highly, highly recommend their website, and please reach out to me. I will give you the links to the some very interesting articles on their blog that they have. So this company has created the 6-dimensional model, which actually allows to describe the different national cultures, and then it also relates to the organizational culture. I'm very proud to be part of the team of the Culture Factor company. I'm the certified professional, and the tools that they provide actually make it a lot more easier to deal with the topic of the national culture. So there are, a few dimensions which help us to better understand, and I will go through each one of them to better understand the different national cultures. Number 1, power distance. This is the factor that describes the extent to which the less powerful members of the society, institution, organization within a country expect and accept that the power is distributed unequally. I would love to use the example of 3 countries today, just to give some comparison. Number 1 is Russia. This is my native country. This is where I'm coming from. UAE, United Arab Emirates. This is where I spent most of the time in having my business as well. And I would also would love to include Germany, which I also have some relationships with this country and has been working a lot with the German companies. So this is my choice, but later on, I can give you the tool that allows you to compare the countries of your choice. But just to simplify today's discussion, I will cover this. I will use these 3 countries as an example. So talking about the power distance, so this acceptance of the fact that there are the power is distributed unevenly in Russia is very high. So people accept that there are richer people and poorer people, that there are people who are more mighty, less mighty. And they accept that. And this is how it builds the relationships also within the teams. It is kind of okay that somebody is more experienced, senior, he has his authority because he's the boss. So in a way, this is the extent to which an individual accepts the fact that there are different levels within the society. If we talk about Germany, for example, the power distance level in this country is not very high, let's put it that way. I would even say it is low. So in Germany, regardless of at which level you are, yes, you understand that there can be different levels, but still people expect that the people from different layers, they would act in due respect to other people. Okay, so it's not very much accustomed to kind of show off, to demonstrate your power. It is like shocking if somebody is demonstrating the power, because there is more, the society is more inclined to less evenly distributed power. Okay. Next, individualism. This is the extent to which we describe ourselves as I or we. Is this is a collectivist society or individualist society? In collectivist societies, people belong to kind of groups. India would be a perfect example of this group society, because there are different clans, I would say, yeah, different groups where if you don't belong to this particular group, it's very difficult for you to kind of change it or make a step out and join any other group. So yeah, this is how it is described. And as an example, in UAE, this factor is more about I. Although people do build relationships, your vast is important, but still it's more like individualist society. Okay, in Germany, we're talking about more collectivist society. There is more the things, even if you watch the news about Germany, there is a lot of about we, us, it's a lot of building around, the collectivist society and what we do as a country, what we do as a nation. I will explain later on how all of that correlates with the organizational culture. Now, the next parameter is the motivation towards achievement and results. And if we are looking at this parameter as a continuum, on one side is the more decisive and results-oriented societies, where result is important, where winners, best in class, they were the first ones, stuff like that. And on the other side of this continuum are the societies which are more consensus-oriented. This is where the quality of life is important, caring about others is important. And on this respect, Germany is scored quite high. Russia is kind of below the average of this, 100% of this continuum, which actually describes the way people are, striving for success and achieving results. The next parameter, I think, is very, it may look a little bit vague, but I'm sure I will explain that to you, and you would agree that this is very much important. The uncertainty avoidance. This is the parameter that shows to which extent the society deals with the fact that the future is unknown and cannot be predicted. And with this respect, whether the society feels threatened about it, are we afraid of the fact that we don't know what's going to happen in the future? If we are taking certain steps to make sure that we avoid this uncertainty avoidance. In the societies where the uncertainty avoidance is high, what the people do when you don't know what to expect in the future, what do you want to do? You want to make sure that today everything is fine. So you want the results quicker, you want the decisions to be made faster, you want to make sure, you want to avoid this uncertainty. So in my native country, this parameter is 95 out of 100. And this explains why, for example, a lot of Russian businesses that are coming to UAE, they cannot be really successful. They're not really succeeding because they want it fast. They don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's part of your DNA. It's very difficult to control it. And I was the victim in a way of this uncertainty avoidance. I remember very well when I was just starting in UAE. I was meeting one of the governmental organizations where there were potential for joint activities, collaboration, stuff like that. So following my nature, what I did right after the meeting, within 24 hours, I've sent the proposal very much detail, like we do this and that, expecting that in my eyes this is great. In my eyes, from my background, with my experience in my national culture, this is like, I'm amazing, I'm a professional. I want to I'm following up, I'm providing details, I'm very concrete, I didn't miss out everything. So for me, this is uncertainty avoidance. This is how it, in reality, this is how it is working out. In UAE, in Germany, actually, this parameter is a lot lower. So people tend to not be as much threatened by this uncertain future, moving slowly, planning, evaluating. There is no rush, okay? There is no rush. That's the key point. The next parameter, which helps us to understand better the national culture and the way people are reacting, are the long-term and short-term orientation. This is the way the society maintains the links with the past, whether we're preserving the past, we are basing on our, like, say, success. How do we deal with the challenges of the future? How do we prefer to maintain the time-honored traditions and the norms, or is like changing every time depending on the context? The cultures which are scoring high on the long-term orientation, they are in a way more pragmatic. They are kind of preparing for the future. They're working today to prepare their, long-term results, and this is how they deal with that. So comparing the three countries, Germany, Russia, and UAE, the UAE is certainly the the country which is long-term oriented. They are preparing for the future, but again, in a slower way than some other nations, for example. And the last parameter that helps us to understand the national culture is the indulgence. Honestly, for me, that was the most difficult thing to understand. What is it all about? And the reason behind that is that me coming from Russia, we are scoring very low on this parameter. So what is indulgence? This is the extent to which the people try to control their desires and impulses based on the way they were raised. Okay. The relatively weak control is the indulgence, and the relatively strong control, is the restraint. So it's the way we're actually enjoying the life, whether we are looking into bright today and we enjoy life and we want to sorry, I forgot the word. If we want to make sure that we are rewarding ourselves for what we are doing today. So this is something that is also reflecting on, this is something that reflects the way people are treating their desires, whether they are into making sure they're indulging themselves or they are not. So when we talk about the cultures, this is the dimensions that can actually help us to understand better the different national cultures. And what I mentioned earlier is that the tool that may help you to understand better the different countries and the nationality background is, you can find it on the website of the Culture Factor Group. Also, please free to reach out if you don't find it, but it's very easily Googled. Just type in Google 6 dimensions culture factor, and you will get to this amazing tool. Basically, you can choose the different countries over there and you can compare them, seeing the different scores for different nationalities. Now, a very much important note that I would like to make is that please keep in mind that this research done by the Culture Factor, and they do it regularly, and they do update their figures, and they change it like every 5 years depending on the results. this is very, very much helicopter view. So you can't expect, like I'm Russian, for example. It doesn't mean that I would only act like that. Even more, I can tell you, when I did my, we have a tool which is called Culture Compass. This is where you can kind of measure yourself against the different national cultures. I'm not really, fitting into the Russian compass, okay? So my behavioral patterns do vary a lot from the way the Russia is scored. And this is actually explains why I have trouble working with Russian companies, probably, or 100% Russian businesses, is that my mentality is slightly different. So again, please don't take it for granted. Like if you want to look at India as an example, and you have a person coming from India, it doesn't mean that he would only behave like that. But deep inside, this is influencing the way he is communicating. Like in my example, that I mentioned earlier when I was talking to an Emirati company. I mean, this is my DNA. This is my nature. I wanted to look good in my eyes, but that was not what is looking good for them. Okay, so there might be some differences on this respect. Going further, I want to step back and remind you again what we started with. We talked about the cultures and subcultures. We talked now about the national culture as such, and about the different dimensions that may help us to explain why, different people are different. I think it's a fantastic tool. Actually, the culture factor is probably one of the few companies in the world that actually found a way to measure the culture. Now, if we talk about the organizational culture, all these parameters can be transformed, or they are transformed in the tools to measure also the organizational culture. They are interlinked. If you want to compare later on the 6 dimensions of the national culture and the 6 dimensions of the organizational culture, they are like very much interlinked. Okay. When we talk about the organizational culture, again, it is easier to change it. I mean, it requires efforts, it requires times, but comparing to the national culture, this is something that you can really influence over the period of time. So talking about the different parameters, parameter number 1, organizational effectiveness. The company or your subculture, your team, can be either means-oriented or goals-oriented. It is a very, very different approaches that if you think about a person from the different background, let's say a person with from the, let's say, German cultural perspective, or someone from Brazil, we might have a very, very different understanding and internal knowledge about how should I be doing my job, whether it's more about achieving the goals with whatever it takes, or it's about keeping the procedures, making sure that we're working on the processes, and means are more important than the goals. I need to mention, though, that when we talk about the organizational culture, it is important to understand the nature of the business. Like, for example, what is working for a hospitality business, for a hotel, for example, is not something that would be working for the nuclear plant. Okay, so also please keep this in mind. So yeah, and going back to organizational culture and the national culture, the way the person, your team member, is doing what he is doing, interlinked with your organizational culture, this is where the clash can be happening. Okay, and means versus goals, this can be one of the parameters that influences. The next parameter, the customer orientation, we can be more like internally focused, and these are the organizations and the teams that kind of have a perception that we know better what is good for the client. Take the example of Apple. Did they ever ask about whether you want, a phone with just a screen, no buttons? No. They know, but they design, they create the product without literally like paying a lot of attention about what the customer wants. Okay, they are creating the demand and they explain to the customer, dear customer, this is what you want. And on the other side of this continuum are the externally oriented teams and subcultures. These are more customer oriented. Yes, hospitality would be definitely one of the examples. Airlines business. These are the organizations which are very much sensitive to the feedback from the market. Another example from the if I mentioned Apple today, if you talk about another company like Nokia, for example, I'm not sure how old you are, guys, but I remember this company very well. So remember how many different types of the models they had, like this color, that color, bigger buttons, smaller buttons, screen like that, screen folding, unfolding, stuff like that. So they were trying to please the different segments of the customer, really looking at what is demanded by the market. And to the certain extent, there was nothing wrong about that. I remember that, for my father, for example, I was always searching for the phone with big buttons because, he's old and he couldn't see very well. The next layer is the level of control that is kind of perceived as okay, for us as a subculture. So on one side, these are innovative culture. This is where we are, building the plane as we fly it. These are all about the innovations, trying, hypothesis, all of this stuff. And on the other side, very much disciplined organizations and subcultures in the businesses where the discipline and following the rules is very much important. Not being late to your job place, making sure that you do certain things in this certain way and not any other way around until you've been told to be doing that differently. The next parameter that helps to understand the organizational and subculture is the level of focus. We are more locally focused, like, creating our own clan, if I may say so, tribe, with our own, we know better. Sorry, it's not about knowing better. We are the tribe. Yes, that would be the right focus. So the sense of belonging for the new person, it's very much difficult to get into this locally focused teams. This is where you kind of need to prove to other team members that you deserve to be part of this tribe. And on the other side of this continuum are the more professional societies where these tribe rules are not as important. These are, by the way, the expert businesses. These are the businesses where you need to really get aligned with what is going on from outside of your business and your team. Legal services, consulting services. These are the type of the teams which are usually like very much professionally oriented. Approachability. On the one side are the open teams where you can talk to your boss, you can talk to everyone, you can get the answer, and everybody easily approachable. It's easy to build into these teams. On the other side, these are the close teams where the relationships dictate that you really need to, first of all, make sure that you learn what you are supposed to learn. You are supposed to first of all, think yourself, and only then you need to approach the boss for any other questions. So again, if we link that into the national culture, imagine somebody coming from the society where it is more of the collectivist society. It is, less of uncertainty avoidance. And this is somebody with that background coming into very close society with a lot of discipline, with the local focus. So imagine how difficult it might be for this type of person to get aligned with this team. Last but not least is the management philosophy. This is the way the organization or the subculture or the team is actually treating the people within the team. On one side, these are the companies which are really caring about the employees, which want to make sure that the teams and each one of the employees are like happy. The organization cares about their well-being. I remember one of the examples is the company that we were dealing here in the UAE, and they relocated part of the team from Ukraine. And they said they even relocated, they moved their beds so that these team members felt more comfortable, felt more at home, having their usual sleeping conditions with them. And on the other side of this philosophy is the organizations where pressure is the key. Okay, you need to perform. It doesn't matter at which cost. You have the baby sick, it's not our problem. You just need to perform. Just find the time, organize yourself. One thing that I want to mention is that although I'm giving like kind of extreme examples, neither of that is wrong. I mean, I've seen different teams, different organizations with some of the things which may look wired for somebody outside. But if this is something, and this organizational culture enables your strategy, allows you to achieve your objectives, probably this is the way. Okay. The challenge starts when you have a big turnover, when you find it difficult to get your team aligned. So this is where it requires attention. So when we talk about the national culture and the organizational culture, one thing that I wanted to make sure that you take this message across is that cultures and subcultures, first of all, this is the definable context. Okay, it is something that you can understand. I mean, it's understandable. There are tools to measure that, to explain that. One thing which is very much important, and I want to repeat this thought, and I repeat it every time I do workshops on the cultural diversity, is that usually the biggest issue is not that the other people are having different mindset. The issue is usually that you are having your context and you are acting according your autopilot or DNA, and this is which might be an issue sometimes. So adapting yourself, understanding the different subcultures, understanding the values behind, because all of these dimensions that I was describing today, both on the national culture and the organizational culture, they all have these layers of symbols, rituals, heroes, values. There is something that is deep inside, okay? And if you catch up that, if you understand that, you will be a super great leader. You will be a fantastic team builder, which is managing the international team just like that. That would be much more easier from you. National culture may either conflict or foster on different levels. It may spin up, it may be a hurdle, it may be something that switches on as an autopilot. Not everybody is like the same. People have different background. Some people may have been born in one country, then being brought up in a different country, getting married to a person from the other nationality. So it is much more complex, in the real life world. So keep this in mind. Don't use the cliches. Make sure that you are sensitive to these parameters. And if you encounter an issue with one of your team members, look at the country comparison tool. Try to understand where is the difference, okay? What are the things where do we think differently, where we perceive things differently? So when you understand this difference, it's easy then to communicate, to give feedback, to talk to the person, and finding the ways how you can move forward together, okay? If you try to build a relationship based only on symbols and rituals, this is not working. I've seen a few examples of the organizations that tried to work on the organizational culture, mainly through declared like symbols, or quotes or heroes. It doesn't work that way. So when you talk about the organizational culture, the basics are the values. What are we about? What do we translate? What is important for us? What is really guiding us as an organization? And when we talk about like this example, if we talk about the team and think of the team, even a small team, as an individual, every individual has his values, every individual has his way of living, maybe sometimes unconscious, but if you formulate that, if you work on that, it really works perfectly well. On this note, my dear, it's 45 minutes. Oh, I'm fantastically effective today. Sorry. On this note, I would like to thank you for being with me today. If you have any questions, if you want me to dive deeper into any of the topics, please let me know. It's a complex thing if we talk about the national culture and organizational culture. 45 minutes, of course, is not enough. But at least we made an effort. We talked about the different dimensions which help to describe how different nationalities, actually how different cultures are wired. And I hope that today you received some practical tools to understand how it works on the organizational level. I wish you all the best. I'm looking forward to meet you next time. Our next meeting will be on February 14. We will talk about the employee engagement. Excuse me, my voice is going down. I will be looking forward to meet you at that meeting, and have a fantastic Friday and the weekend. Enjoy and look forward to your comments and questions.